Welcome to The Maintenance Mindset, an audio-video podcast brought to you by the Multifamily Media Network. I'm your host, Paul Rhodes, and over the more than 3 decades in the apartment industry, I've had roles that include being on-site, providing services as a vendor, creating and delivering multiple education programs, and active association work. This podcast is centered on the often overlooked role that our on-site maintenance workers play. You know, the men and women that respond in the middle of the night to the toilet call, or the after hours, it's really hot in my apartment request, or my favorite, my ring fell down the drain, get over here now. In other words, the often unsung heroes who are responsible for asset preservation and resident satisfaction. Working in multifamily maintenance provides interesting, sometimes amusing, and often fascinating stories and viewpoints. My encouragement to you is this: whatever you do it with a maintenance mindset.
Before we go any further, I want to ask you to do something. Now, those of you who happen to be driving a car or using public transportation, you are exempt from this request I'm about to make. If you happen to be in one spot, no matter where you're at, especially for those of you who are in an office or taking place in public space of any kind, what I want to ask you to do is to take a moment and head to the local restroom area. Go into the appropriate lavatory and take a look around. I will pause for a few seconds while you do that, and during that pause time, press pause on this particular show and go complete that task, because it is very relevant to what we are about to discuss today. Ready?
Today, I have something a little bit different for you, and that is a little bit of personal philosophy. See, I live life by 3 rules. 2 of those rules are emblazoned on my dining room wall. My wife made a quilted wall hanging that have 2 of those rules on them, because the 3rd rule is enforced all the time. The first 2 might be optional. You see, it's the 3 rules of coffee. Rule number 1 says, life is too short for bad coffee. Rule number 2, bad coffee is better than no coffee, because of rule number 3, which is always in force: no coffee, no worky. I believe in coffee. Matter of fact, I just about always have a cup nearby that is full of that wonderful, velvety, fantastic elixir of life. The reason why I'm talking to you about this today is we now have the Multifamily Media Network Grounds for Connection coffee. And if you haven't tried this yet, I can tell you from experience, it is definitely rule number 1 coffee. This stuff is fantastic. It's a mixture of beans from Central America, South America, and Indonesia. It definitely has a chocolatey note to it that is the fantastic way I use to stay caffeinated. And it's not rule 2 coffee, because remember rule 3, no coffee, no worky. So if you're a late night maintenance team member who has to be up either early or way later than what you want, the next day, do yourself a favor. Get yourself a bag of Grounds for Connection from the Multifamily Media Network website. Thank you for your attention, and have a caffeinated day.
Welcome back. Now, for those of you who are driving, you just realized that we took a quick break there for a second, and it's important to do so. If you're on your way to work or you're on your way to any public building, I would like to encourage you, when you get there, take a look at the facilities. It is my contention that after traveling across the country, for those of you on video, you can even see that I am in a hotel room this time. When traveling around the country, I do go into and out of public restrooms quite frequently in airports, office buildings, even on various properties from all different management companies. And I have to say, where public restrooms are concerned, including the airport, I would give us, as a civilization, a grade of about a C. Some places C plus. Now, the more regulated the area and the areas surrounding that restroom, the better they are. The less regulated and the less I don't want to use the word professional, but the less regulated those areas are, they receive a lower cleanliness score. Now, the reason for this particular topic this time around actually has a source. It comes from the Bradley Company. They're a company that provides restroom amenities, faucets, towel holders, the blowers that we end up seeing and running our hands underneath quite frequently. Well, every year they produce what they call the annual Healthy Handwashing Survey. And reading the results brought to mind the fact that I can't tell you how many management company, either as a customer or providing advice or even just going into the office for whatever reason, multifamily management company apartments have a tendency to get neglected. Now, not all of them. Not all of them. I will say out front that there are exceptions that prove the rule. Some that I've been in recently have been wonderful and beautiful. Others left a lot to be desired. That's why I wanted you to go into whatever restroom you're nearby and see if maybe with your input, we can raise the average from my rather harsh grading of about a C. And if I'm honest here, this trip in particular, I've been in a couple of restaurant bathrooms and one office building bathroom that left a lot to be desired. The office space one, though, was clean appearance, but where it lost it was actually the smell. But it's not a smell of sewage or a smell of being unclean. It actually was that they had the air freshener thing cranked up to, I don't know, on a scale of 1 to 10, approximately about 180. I mean, you walk in there and it smelled like a flower pot while walking through the department store makeup counter where all the fragrances are sold, which is right next door to a bleach production plant that all happen to be in a woodland village. And all of those smells were an absolute assault to your olfactory senses. And see, that to me is absolutely horrifyingly awful. Well, you see, this survey, it's a fascinating thing because it's taken of Americans, over 1,000 people, and the numbers basically, it goes on to say, are a good mix between men and women. And what it determined is that 77% see others walking out of a public restroom without washing their hands. Okay, what do you think? Is that about where you'd put it? I would say, yeah, roughly 3/4 of the time I do see guys, because that's all I know, walking right past those sinks when they get finished doing whatever business they had to do in the restroom. Oh, but wait, it goes even more than that. This survey asks other public restroom relevant questions. Like the one that caught my attention was 72% of people want more privacy in restrooms. With of that, 47% want timers to be installed in the stalls. That actually makes a lot of sense, because I can't say how often people go into the restroom to use their cell phones and view, okay, never mind. YouTube videos. They go in there and view YouTube videos or get on the Insta, Facebook, a Linktagram thing, for social media, and then they lose track of time. And meanwhile, everybody else is waiting to get into the stall. That's another topic. 42% want capacity notifiers outside the public restroom. Now, both of those points, I do think we could apply to the apartment industry and really any office, for that matter, with when we go to our office, to our place of business. Does the restrooms that we provide to the public, first of all, do they provide privacy? I would think for our offices, what about the door lock? Is it clear that when you go in and you close the door behind yourself, is it clear that the door is actually locked? I can't tell you the number of times that I go in to do my business and I close the door and then I turn the little button on the top of the knob and I pause just for a moment and say, wait a second. Did it actually lock? Because I'm not really sure. So then you go through the task of opening the door, pushing the lock, double checking, shaking the outside handle. And I have to confess, sometimes, even in an apartment community building, it wasn't locked. Now, the reason why this is relevant for our properties is myriad. First, according to Bradley in their survey, 71% of people say they are more likely return to a business that has a clean and well-kept restroom. 52% report that it is more favorable to a business as a whole to have a clean and well-stocked restroom. 84% say that if they go to a business and the bathroom is unclean, they will not return. I mean, we're talking about office space. We're talking about an office or even a multifamily business. Has it ever happened to you to where you go sit down at a table in a restaurant and maybe you order your drink or you get the whatever bread or chips or the rolls that come with the meal, and you decide before you place an order you need to go to the restroom. And once you get into the restroom, it's not exactly appealing. You can tell that nobody's really taking care of it. And what does that make you think about the food or the service that you're about to receive? I tend to view that as a direct reflection. So let's think back. Those of you who are at your property or maybe will be going to your property, what does your restroom in your office say about your business? What about the restrooms near the fitness center or the gym, if your community has one of those? What about the ones down by the swimming pool? Do we treat those with the importance that we need to have? I mean, I don't know of a survey that has ever looked at a renewal ratio based on the cleanliness of the pool bathrooms. But I have to believe that if the swimming pool is an extremely important amenity for our residents, for them to use, that if they find the restroom next to the swimming pool in disrepair, that can't be a good statement towards why our residents would want to renew with us. So here's kind of the lesson that we're talking about today. We have this amenity at our communities that a large percentage of our potential customers and our current customers are using. Do we treat it as such? The number of restrooms that I have been in apartments, offices, or apartment amenity spaces that have, I guess you could call them minor deficiencies, but for someone like myself and someone possibly like your maintenance team, someone like your office team might notice, is huge, full of challenges. Take a look at the caulking on the countertop. Take a look at the caulking between the backsplash and the wall. Both of these areas on a lot of older communities, even some newer communities, are not being maintained. Caulking, unless it is cleaned regularly, will require replacement sooner rather than later. If it is being cleaned regularly, pay attention to a color shift, especially if your cleaners are using an ammonia-based cleaner. Yes, we're talking here about using window cleaner. There is a very prominent window cleaner that uses blue dye in what it does. It's been around for years and we all use it kind of everywhere. The challenge is, though, if it is used to clean both silicone or latex caulking, it can dye the caulking blue. For some reason, it's been my experience that the green particular cleaner doesn't happen to dye it that color, or the purple one that is very, very prevalent, especially in the Southeast. Pay attention to what's going on in your restrooms of your office. Yes, I know. Take a look at, if we're talking about caulking, take a look at the bottom of the toilet. Some municipalities require the bottom of your toilet to be caulked to the floor. No, that doesn't prevent leaks. It's only there for looks. However, your residents, your potential customers, notice that every time they come in. And you see, as workers in an office, we tend to fall prey to what is often referred to as the broken window syndrome. The broken window syndrome happens like this. If everything is perfect, we completely gloss over what's happening. Break one office window on a block of offices, one window, and the entire block goes to crap. It was proven in a survey back in the late 70s, early 80s, if I remember correctly, reading a book about it. And what had happened is they took two blocks right next to each other. And I'm remembering this from years ago, so I may be a little bit hazy on the details. But what happened is they had one block where they paid to update and maintain the windows on the outside of this one building. In other words, if a window got fogged or it got broken or cracked or vandalized, they replaced it instantly. The rest of the building, while yes, they did have to pay for regular upkeep to maintain those windows, the other building, they just kind of let go. In other words, when one window got broken, Another window got broken. A third one got vandalized. Spray paint began to appear on that building. Meanwhile, the one right next door, a window got broken. They fixed it. And then it didn't happen for a while. And then a window got broken and they fixed it instantaneously. And it didn't happen for longer. And basically what the results were, and psychologically the outcome of this particular study, showed that the building that was obvious care, attention, and here's the important word, maintenance being done to that building had a lower overall cost of maintaining over the same period of time as opposed to the building next door that eventually lost every one of their windows, plus extra damage that people did, that vandals, that you'd have kids that would throw rocks through the windows, because who cares? Nobody's paying attention to it. So, yeah. What I'm getting at in this is, if our office bathroom, this area where we want, again, our customers, our potential customers to go in and use, if they walk in and the caulk line on the bottom of the toilet looks like somebody used their elbow as the tool to caulk it in, looks heinous and ugly and nasty, that one little thing, what does that say to our residents when they go and begin walking our property? Yeah, I know, that's the bathroom at the office. Our leasing team is going to take them out on a tour. Our self-guided tours for our properties, they're going to go to a vacant apartment, take a look at the vacant apartment, and they're going to begin looking for all those little things. Now, you and I both know we can't make everything perfect. But remember, that warehouse building, stuff wasn't always perfect there either. But what did happen is the stuff that could be repaired was, as quickly as possible. The caulking on the countertop or at the toilet, just one example, it becomes obvious when that's been wrong for a long period of time. And our potential customers know that. They can see it. Now, the second item to take away here goes back to the very first point that we had. And this is where we get to the neglected task. You see, according to the Bradley survey, 77% of people see other people not washing their hands. What I take that to mean for us as maintenance technicians on site, do yourself a favor. In your supplier catalog, especially if your supplier serves both the apartment industry and the hotel industry, they will sell small bottles like this one of dishwashing detergent or hand detergent, hand soap. Have some of this in your toolbox. Put it in your 5-gallon bucket whenever you go to an occupied residence apartment. And if you do something that is less than sanitary, because, you know, it does happen every once in a while, do yourself a favor, and before you leave the apartment, before you go touching anything else, wash your hands. I know the survey is about using public restroom, but here's the takeaway. The people who were asked the question in the survey were not self-reporting on themselves. Yes, I always wash hands. All right, let's all be honest. If we were to answer that and self-report, do we wash our hands every single time when we get finished going to the restroom? Don't answer that, because I'll be honest with you, I don't want to know the answer. That's kind of a rhetorical self-reflection type question to ask. But here's the thing. If 77% of people who were asked in that survey report that others aren't washing their hands, and you and I end up going into our residents' apartments to perform service, and they know either being home or when they're not home, they know that you or I had to go in there and do some less than desirable tasks to deal with some less than, shall we say, clean materials. Do yourself a favor and wash your hands. Whatever your frequency is, just kick it up. Wash your hands more often. Which that leads to, okay, what does it mean to wash one's hands? Well, according to the CDC, that means that you need to wash your hands for at least 20 seconds with soap and warm water. You see, the temperature of the water really doesn't matter very much except for comfort level. Using cold water on your hands is uncomfortable. Using warmer water is comfortable. The reality is, all you need is water. The temperature of the water doesn't matter. Reason being, hot water at the temperature you and I can stand does not change whether or not germs and disease and viruses and all the bad stuff that we're trying to remove are actually removed. The water would have to get up to be the temperature that we are supposed to be cooking all of our meat to before the temperature alone is what ends up killing the germs. Yes, we're talking here about the food safe standard of cooking everything to 165 degrees. I don't know of anybody who washes their hands in 165 degree water. As a matter of fact, the water temperature coming out of the faucet is never ever supposed to be above about 125 degrees. So use warm water, whatever's comfortable. The soap that you use, however, does serve a huge purpose. It is a lubricant and a sanitizer. The lubricating part is there to create the most important piece of washing your hands, and that is actually the friction, the rubbing your hands together underneath running water. It's my understanding in the early 1800s, when medicine was just beginning to modernize, I guess is the word to use, that doctors changed and radically decreased their morbidity rate just by one practice. You see, back then, doctors would time manage their day by separating into blocks. They would begin the day down in the mortuary looking at the cadavers and people who had died recently, and they do those autopsies and examinations and that first thing in the morning. That way it wasn't too hot. After that, the doctors would see women. Then, at the end of the day, the doctors would see men. And the thing that was discovered, kind of by accident, was there was one doctor that instead of, when he got finished in the morning, washing his hands in that basin of water, he actually had his nurse stand with a pitcher and pour water across his hands where he would use the lye soap and allow that fresh water to be collected in the basin for later discarding. Now, the practice of the day up until that point was you take the lye soap and you put your hands into the basin. And so that water gets recycled all day long, dirtier and dirtier as it went. Well, this particular doctor, just because he only washed his hands with fresh water, didn't use the used water that was in the basin, his morbidity rate, meaning the number of his patients that died, dropped drastically. You've got to imagine all the germs and stuff that came from the dead bodies that he was doing in the morning would end up getting transferred to the women and the men that he would see all day because he's reusing that water. It's my understanding, if I remember the story correctly, that he was actually put on trial for witchcraft because the number of patients who didn't die was so low when compared with other doctors. And he had to prove that the only thing he was doing was what we're talking about here, washing his hands. So having fresh running water coming out of the faucet, which we get through our municipal supply, we don't have to have somebody standing there with a pitcher. But the second thing is the actual scrubbing motion with running water going over them. You need to do this long enough for that scrubbing motion to dislodge the germs and the viruses and the dirt and the debris and allow it to be rinsed down the drain in the sink. The CDC actually recommends that you wash your hands long enough to sing happy birthday. Now, I know this is February of 2025. We are almost to our 5-year Declaration of World War Germ anniversary. And during that time period, we were bombarded with the reminders to wash our hands. But apparently, based on the Bradley company, we've kind of lost our way with that reminder. So let this be a reminder. Don't let it be a neglected task. And according to Bradley, our residents are paying attention. Oh, one last thing. Smells matter. Ladies and gentlemen of the maintenance technician world, please pay attention to odors. Yes, I am including body odor in this. Do yourself a favor, wear your deodorant, wear your appropriate fragrances, but not too much. If you decide to go out and play a sporting event the night before or even the morning of, you like to run on the track, do yourself a favor and make yourself smell appropriately. You do not want to walk into a resident's apartment and change the entire environment just because you really, really like a cologne. The best odors are very, very mild, similar to that bathroom that I walked into this past week. Wow! Secondly, though, if you go into a resident's apartment and you mess with the toilet, and the toilet is on the work order, so your resident knows that you did, do yourself a favor. When you get finished, clean up after yourself and wipe it down using a mild sanitizing solution. If it's bleach safe, I would recommend using a diluted bleach solution. That way, when your resident comes back home, knowing that you got called in to work on something that is less than pleasant, leave behind a nice, clean, not overwhelming smell. If anything, that shows your resident that you respect their home. And in the same way on our properties, if our customer or potential customer comes into our offices, think the same way. Communicate to them that you respect them as potential people that we're going to get into a business partnership with. You respect them enough to provide clean facilities for that human event that we all have to take part in. Yes, going to the bathroom. Thank you for spending your time with me today. I hope you have a fantastic rest of your week, and I do look forward to seeing you somewhere.
Thank you for listening to this episode of The Maintenance Mindset. I hope you take away ideas that apply to your current and future career goals. Please check out Maintenance Mindset Minute to hear short-form, high-impact, applicable, maintenance-centered information. Whatever you do today, do it with a maintenance mindset. If you enjoyed this episode, please like, comment, and subscribe. Visit multifamilymedianetwork.com to learn more about our other industry podcasts, thought pieces, and sponsorship opportunities. I'll see you somewhere.